basically everything below it's going to stop working. All right, so with the 7 fundamentals, we started off with stance, we got grip, we got alignment, side picture. Next thing we're talking about is trigger press, okay? So while grip is the most important for being fast, a fast shooter, your trigger press is the most important for being an accurate shooter for the most part, okay? So the difficulty with trigger is you're working 2 different pendulums trying to make it a straight back and forth motion, meaning your trigger is more or less moving in this motion and your finger is moving in this motion. So you have 2 angles working against each other. But there is a point where they're both coming flat back and forth, which is where you want to find for yourself, whether it's your trigger length of pull, your finger length, the gun you're using, you need to find where that straight back portion is for you, okay? And there's plenty of drills that we can work on to get there, but having that flat at 5, meaning that 5th pound of pressure, which most stock triggers for striker fire guns are about 5-ish pounds. So I just use that as a general rule of thumb, flat at 5. So flat at 5 means that trigger finger and that trigger are coming flat straight back through the gun at that 5th pound of pressure. Because again, at 4.9 to no pounds of pressure on that trigger, you can have everything all messed up. No sight alignment, no sight picture, your grip's all messed up. But at that 4.9 to 5, where that trigger actually breaks and that round goes off, that's where everything needs to get dialed in and be right, okay? So most of the time, why you miss is because at that 5th pound of pressure, whether it was your grip was off, your trigger pressure was at the wrong angle, your sights weren't aligned, that is when you miss, is that last final like 1/10 of a pound of pressure before that shot breaks. Not everything was perfectly in line and it was just off just a hair to where your shot doesn't go where you wanted it to. So trigger press is very, very important. Also with trigger press, not only how you pull it backwards, but how far your finger comes forward to reset the trigger, right? Every trigger has a click or a reset point as you come forward off the trigger. What we don't want to do is pull the trigger, bang, it goes off, it clicks to reset and our finger comes all the way to here and then comes back, right? Because all that does is its distance, and distance always is going to equate to time. So that could take for the ease of math and adding, because I'm a dumb Marine, is let's say it's a 2-inch length of pull from the time you have a finger in the trigger to the time the shot breaks. And it's a 1 inch to the time the trigger resets, right? So every trigger pull should be 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch. Now, if you start blowing off the trigger, then it's 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch. So now it's becoming a double length of pull each trigger press, right? So knowing exactly where that trigger resets and being able to apply pressure back on that trigger as soon as it resets is very, very important to getting quick follow-on shots. And it helps with accuracy because there's less movement of your finger, so it moves the gun around less. So knowing exactly, one, where your trigger breaks, so you know where flat is, or at least where flat feels, and knowing where your trigger resets, that way you're not blowing off the trigger and then coming all the way back on the trigger. Those are very important, especially when it comes to accuracy and shooting fast.